Ever feel like, man, the education system could really use a refresh?
Yeah.
Well, today's deep dive, it's all about the people who are, actually out there doing that, shaking things up.
Right.
Curriculum administrators.
Yeah.
The architects of learning, as we like to call them.
I like that.
The masterminds behind, like, what actually gets taught in our schools,
And it's a role that is constantly evolving, right?
Yeah.
Especially with like all this new educational technology.
Well, absolutely.
It's amazing to see how these administrators are like weaving in these new tools and these new approaches just to like, to prepare students for a future we can only like imagine at this point.
Right. It's way more dynamic than just like picking textbooks.
Oh, for sure.
We were lucky enough to get our hands on some really insightful articles from RoleCatcher.
Yeah.
All published in December of 2023.
Okay.
And they really break this down.
Yeah.
They have this great one, Career Guide, Curriculum Administrator.
I love that one.
And it gets into the nitty-gritty of what these folks actually do.
Yeah, what do they do all day?
Every day. Yeah.
Yeah.
So one thing that really stood out to me was how they use this term, this phrase, educational detective.
Okay.
And they're talking about curriculum administrators.
Interesting.
They're not just coming up with lesson plans just out of nowhere. They're analyzing data. They're looking at trends, and they're figuring out what is actually working for students.
Yeah, it's like being a scientist almost.
Yeah, it really is. It's like Sherlock Holmes, but for education.
I like it.
I kind of like that analogy, right?
Yeah.
But seriously, though, how does that play out, like day to day?
Well, they're responsible for, like, developing the curriculum, of course, and refining it. But it's not like a one and done. They're constantly evaluating and tweaking and sometimes even like overhauling things based on all this data and feedback they're getting. So
Sounds very collaborative.
Extremely, yeah.
Lots of collaboration.
Absolutely. Yeah, they're working closely with the teachers, with the other administrators, even with parents, to make sure everyone's on the same page.
Right.
And make sure the curriculum is actually meeting the needs of everybody involved.
Now, we can't talk about modern education without talking about,
let's be real,
the elephant in the room, technology.
Right.
This career guide even touches on this too.
Okay.
Digital learning is like exploding.
It's huge.
New platforms are coming out left and right.
Left and right, yeah. It's a lot.
It's a lot to keep up with. For sure.
But the impact of technology, I think it goes a lot deeper than just, new digital platforms.
Yeah.
Like, we're seeing AI
Really?
being used in some pretty fascinating ways.
Interesting.
To, like, actually shape the curriculum.
Wow.
AI is designing what kids are learning. That sounds like a sci-fi movie.
Yeah, a little bit, right?
It does.
But it's happening.
It's happening right now.
Right now. Wow. So instead of everyone moving at the same pace,
Yeah.
AI can help tailor that experience
Exactly.
to that one student.
Precisely.
Wow. And that's just one thing.
That's just scratching the surface.
Yeah.
And remember that Streamline Your Job Search article?
Oh, yeah, from RoleCatcher. Yeah.
Yes, the one where they talk about employers using AI to analyze job applications.
Yeah.
Turns out curriculum administrators are using that technology too.
Right.
They're using it to like analyze the job market and really figure out like what skills are in demand.
Wow.
And then design the curriculum based on that.
So they're trying to anticipate what skills will be needed years down the line.
Exactly.
That's incredible.
Yeah, they're trying to give students the tools they'll need, like way before they even need them, to thrive in this, ever-changing world.
I love that. Wow.
It's amazing.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We're really getting into like the nuts and bolts of what it actually takes to be a curriculum administrator.
Yeah, it's one thing to kind of like admire the work from afar.
Right.
But if you're actually considering it as a career path, it's good to know like what skills are really in demand.
For sure.
And thankfully, this career guide we've been talking about, the one from RoleCatcher, it has a whole section on that.
Yeah, they did their homework. They went all out with this guide.
Oh, yeah.
So let's break it down for our listeners. What are some of the must-have skills for someone who wants to be a curriculum administrator?
Well, I mean, some of them are transferable, right? Like no matter what field you're in,
right?
Like strong reading comprehension, you need that.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to be doing a ton of research. You've got to stay updated on all the latest educational theories.
Absolutely.
And going through all these curriculum documents, it's a lot of reading.
Oh, yeah. And it's not enough to just, understand it yourself. You have to be able to explain it to other people in a way that makes sense.
Very clearly.
Verbally, in writing.
Yeah. Communication is key, especially when you're working with all these different people.
Yeah, all the teachers and the administrators and the parents.
Exactly, and you need to be a good listener, too.
Yeah, of course.
A good curriculum administrator really needs to be able to, like, hear where everyone's coming from.
Yeah, be receptive.
Understand their perspective.
It's like finding that balance, you know, between being the expert, but also being open to other ideas.
Absolutely. And that actually ties into another set of skills that the career guide talks about.
Okay.
Things like critical thinking, problem solving, sound judgment. You need all of that.
So it's not just about like following a set curriculum. It's about being able to analyze it.
Right.
Figure out what's working, what's not.
And being able to like come up with solutions. Think on your feet a bit.
Exactly. Exactly.
Be creative.
It makes you think about those example profiles they included. Like, those weren't just there for show.
Right.
Those stories really showed how much, like, variety there is in this role.
Oh, yeah. Every school is different.
Right. Every district.
Different challenges, different opportunities.
So a good curriculum administrator, they've got to be adaptable.
For sure.
Okay. So we talked about the skills, but what about, like, the knowledge base?
Yeah.
What kind of education are we looking at?
So the career guide is pretty clear on this one. You generally need at least a bachelor's degree.
Okay.
In education or a related field.
That makes sense.
That's usually the bare minimum.
Right. But I'm guessing to move up, you probably need more.
Yeah, a master's degree is definitely helpful.
Okay.
Or even a doctorate in education, it can give you a real edge, especially if you want to be in a leadership position.
Right, right. So it's not just about those formal qualifications either, right?
No, definitely not.
Like, this field is always changing.
Constantly.
So you have to be willing to keep learning.
Absolutely. Lifelong learning. That's key here.
Makes sense. Going to conferences, taking workshops, staying up to date on all the latest research.
All of it. It all matters.
So let's switch gears for a second and talk about the elephant in the room, the job market.
Okay.
Because even if you have all the right qualifications and experience, getting a job as a curriculum administrator, it's not easy.
Yeah, it's competitive out there.
Very competitive.
Even RoleCatcher, they don't sugarcoat that in their articles.
Right.
Remember that Ace Your Interviews one we were talking about?
Yeah.
They get real about the job search process.
With good reason. But they do offer some pretty cool solutions too.
Yeah, they do.
Like to give job seekers an edge.
And they're using AI to do it, which is really interesting.
Okay, I have to admit, this whole AI thing has got me curious. Like, how does that even work for finding a job?
So remember how we were saying that some employers use AI to like analyze applications?
Right.
RoleCatcher has flipped that. They have this platform that analyzes your resume and it figures out like what skills you might be missing.
Wow.
Based on the jobs you're applying for.
So it's like a personal career coach?
Yeah, kind of.
That's amazing.
And it helps you like tailor your resume and cover letter.
Wow.
To really make it stand out.
That's huge, especially in a field like education, you know, where there's a ton of competition.
Absolutely. You've got to stand out.
Okay, so what about interviews?
They've got you covered there, too.
Really?
They have this cool feature. It's called Ace Your Interviews.
Catchy.
And it uses AI to create, like, mock interviews.
Oh, wow.
So you can practice answering common questions.
Okay.
And you get feedback on how you're doing.
That's amazing.
It's a really safe space to practice and get comfortable with the whole interview process.
So you can walk into that interview feeling super confident.
Exactly. Like, you've got this.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been
yeah.
really digging into this whole curriculum administrator role.
It's fascinating, right?
And honestly, it's way more like impactful than I think I realized at first.
Yeah, it's easy to kind of underestimate the influence these folks really have. When you think about it, they're shaping young minds.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
It's a big deal, for sure.
So we talked about the skills.
Right.
We talked about the tech, the job market.
The whole 9 yards.
But I think it's time to, like, zoom out a bit.
Okay.
Look at the bigger picture.
Yeah, the bigger picture.
Why does this role matter so much, especially, like, now?
You know what I think is really interesting?
Okay.
I think curriculum administrators are kind of like futurists.
Oh, interesting.
Because they're not just thinking about, like, what kids need to learn today.
Right.
They're trying to anticipate what skills, what knowledge is going to be essential years from now.
It's like they're building a curriculum for a world that doesn't even exist yet.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And especially, like you said, now when technology is changing so rapidly.
Right, right.
You need that kind of forward thinking.
And it's not just about, like, you know, getting kids ready for specific jobs either.
No, not at all.
It's about, like, giving them the tools to be adaptable.
Yeah.
To be resilient, to be lifelong learners.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You've got to be able to roll with the punches.
Right.
And a good curriculum, it should really encourage that.
Cool.
Curiosity, critical thinking, all of that.
Yeah, and something else that keeps coming up, I think, is just like how important collaboration is in this role.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It's not a solo mission. Right?
Not at all. You're working with teachers, administrators, parents, sometimes even the students themselves.
Wow.
To make sure everyone's on the same page.
And speaking of collaboration, I mean, we've seen how tech is playing a bigger and bigger role in all of this, too.
For sure, yeah, like those AI learning platforms we were talking about.
Yeah.
All these new ways to personalize education. Yeah. It's really exciting to see how that's all developing.
It really is. So
yeah.
It's a lot to take in, but
it is, yeah.
It's also really, really exciting.
It is.
For our listeners,
yeah.
What would you say is like the one key takeaway?
That's a good question.
That you hope they'll remember from this whole conversation.
I think if we're thinking big picture here, right, being a curriculum administrator, it's really about empowering those future generations.
Absolutely.
It's about giving them the tools they'll need, not just to, get by,
right,
but to really thrive.
In a world that's, always changing.
Exactly, yeah.
That's beautifully said.
Thank you.
It's got me thinking, if I had the chance to, influence the curriculum.
Oh, yeah.
What would I prioritize?
That's a big one.
I know.
It's a big question.
Right. What knowledge, what skills are, non-negotiable?
Right, you got to have these.
Yeah, to be successful in, the years to come.
I don't know. That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
I think it is. I
hope our listeners will keep thinking about that.
Yeah, keep those wheels turning.
For sure.
Well, on that note, if this deep dive has, piqued your interest, definitely go check out those RoleCatcher articles we've been talking about.
Yeah, they're really good.
We'll have links to all of them down in the show notes.
Absolutely, yeah.
It has been such a pleasure exploring this with you today.
It really has. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Until next time, keep those minds curious and never stop learning.